We'll be recording today's session. You can actually find other recordings from our other roundtable discussions on our website at thec100.org. We've covered issues ranging from fundraising in a downturn to adapting your business plan for recession times, team crisis management. But today's discussion is a little different. It's in a short series of roundtable discussions that we're holding on industries that have been drastically impacted, both positively and negatively by COVID, and are presenting some incredible opportunities for entrepreneurship and for new talent flowing into the industry, which is e-commerce. Our conversation is going to be guided today by Boris Wertz, who is really one of the top early stage investors, tech investors in North America. Boris is an entrepreneur first, and then he became an investor. He was the founder and CEO of Abe Books that he sold to Amazon, originally from Germany, now based in Vancouver. Boris is the founder and managing general partner of Version 1 Ventures, and is a board partner with A16Z. If you have questions throughout the session, we ask that you put them in the Q&A. The Q&A bubble is at the bottom of your screen. It's a little different than the chat box. And then we will help curate those questions. If you're called upon, we're going to unmute you. And we need you just to introduce yourself, say where you're calling in from, and share your question. So without further ado, I'm going to actually pass it over to Boris to guide us through some introductions for our panelists. I'll first ask Boris to introduce himself. I mentioned that he's originally from Germany, but let's hear from Boris. Boris, tell us a bit about yourself and what you're focused on, and why, I should say, where you are right now, and your connection to C100, and then I'll have you do introductions to our other fabulous panelists this morning.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for having me, Laura. Always a pleasure to be involved with C100. Boris Wertz, former entrepreneur turned investor, running Version 1 Ventures. We're currently investing out of a $57 million early stage fund. So we are very much focused on SaaS and marketplaces, but also in kind of more edgy areas like crypto and healthcare and energy and climate. So very excited to be here. I'm in Vancouver. Actually today, one of the few days I'm actually in the office. And escaping a little bit the work from home environment. I would love to now hand it over to for introductions for the rest of the panel. And perhaps let's start with Adrienne and then Noura and then Ethan. And quick background on yourself, where you're based, and on your business.
Hi, so I'll start. I'm Adrienne Down Coulson. I am originally from Toronto. I'm coming up to my 8th year living in California. I've been a charter member of C100 for a couple of years now. I was introduced to C100 by Yen Lee, who pretty much knows everyone. So Yen and I worked together at what was formerly known as Ebates, and is now Rakuten. I originally started and launched the Ebates Canada business in Toronto, which is now of course called Rakuten. And 3 years ago, I moved to San Mateo in California, and I'm now the COO of Rakuten Americas, which is a group of 9 different companies, including the cashback business. And we're based in San Mateo and have offices all over the US and Canada and in Brazil, and about 3,500 employees. So that's me.
Thank you.
And I'm Noura Sakkijha. I was born and raised in Jordan. I moved to Toronto about 10 years ago and started Mejuri, which is a direct-to-consumer fine jewelry brand, 5 years ago in 2015. I was part of the 48 Hours in the Valley, I want to say about 3 years ago. Time flies, 3 or 4 years ago. And just a bit about Mejuri. We are, as I said, a direct-to-consumer fine jewelry brand. My background is actually, I'm a 3rd generation in my family to work in jewelry, so I kind of have an insider view on the industry, but I studied engineering, worked in consulting, then decided to come back to this industry to have women buy jewelry for themselves as opposed to marketing for men to buy women jewelry. And so everything about our company, from product design, photography, values is catered towards women to buy for themselves.
Looks like everybody is wearing your jewelry today.
Yes, it's a sign of success. I'm so happy.
Ethan.
All right, hey guys, this is Ethan. I'm actually currently in Calgary, but my short history is that I was born in China, in Tianjin. I came over to Canada as a child, and then I studied actually at UBC in software and computer engineering. And then after that, I moved to Montreal, where I first started a business in the custom shirts space in 2010. Which eventually led to starting Frank & Oak in 2012. Frank & Oak, in its beginning, was focused on making shopping easier for a new generation of men. And I've actually left Frank & Oak in March. And a lot of people have been asking me what I've been doing. Well, other than observing the craziness in the world, I've actually been working on a new model for launching e-commerce businesses that is less focused on capital, but more focused on shared services. So that's what I've been working on, and I'm also launching a new company this fall, which I can't talk about right now.
Thanks everybody for your introductions. I want to start a little bit kind of state of the nation for all of you. The last 3 months have been pretty crazy for almost every individual, every company, but especially for e-commerce, as we've seen an incredible acceleration of e-commerce penetration in North America. And actually all around the world. Would love to hear firsthand from your experiences. How has COVID affected your business? What has changed? How has the craziness played out for all of you? Ethan, why don't you start? I mean, you have observed a little bit from afar, but would love to hear. And then why don't you start? And then we'll take Noura and Adrienne.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've been spending time kind of, once you're able to be independent, I guess, I was able to advise both e-commerce and retailers in the last few months. And obviously what we've seen is a shift from, physical retail to e-commerce. That's obvious. A lot of e-commerce companies have seen growth in the 100 to 200% year over year compared to, the months prior to that. But definitely it's not equal. I think that certain sectors have grown tremendously. Some of those include, wellness, home goods, renovations. A lot of self-care has grown a lot. Some other segments have been more challenging. Apparel is one segment that's been more challenging. People are not interested in buying as much clothing. One really interesting trend that I've seen actually is this shift of e-commerce to local commerce, which is the idea of pickup, which has been around for a while, but now it's kind of everyone's doing it, right? And the platforms and technologies have gone so cheap that, a restaurant selling wine now from their porch is now using e-commerce to do that. And that's creating a whole new opportunity, which is localized e-commerce, which is a big trend. But ultimately, I think beyond the retail aspect, obviously with the shutdown, I think we're also seeing a shift in consumer behaviors, not just towards e-commerce, but towards specific products that they want to buy. And that's driving a lot of both the growth and the decrease, depending on the companies.
Yeah, I think insightful in terms of the offline to online. I think that was definitely what has driven a lot of the Shopify growth in the last 3 months. Certainly every offline retailer that didn't have an online presence needed to do something very quick to have some presence, have some sales, right? And we've probably seen adoption there happening in 3 months that would have happened over the next 3 years. So, Noura.
Yeah, I think so. For us, I think we are venture backed. We had closed the Series B last year. What does that mean? It's essentially our growth trajectory and projections are quite aggressive. They're built for high growth. And so as soon as this obviously happened, we had to think, what does this year look like for us? You're building your entire infrastructure, you're building your team, you're building everything for your future projections that you have aligned with the board. And so we had to stop and think, is this really reasonable for us or not? So the first thing we've done is really relook at our financials and really do some reprojections over there and focus on the key core areas of the business. We obviously, we have 4 stores and we were opening our 5th store during that period. And so we obviously have seen sort of all of this revenue completely shut down. But I have to say, obviously, there's a lot more attraction to online. So we kind of made up a little bit over there. So for a high growth business, I would say it's really the impact is what are your expectations and how can you evolve your cost structure to support you to survive and thrive, essentially, because no one knows. And I guess particular to our industry, the cost of gold shoots up when there's any macroeconomic factor. So we definitely had to take all of these factors into consideration. We are now opening some retail stores, and we're seeing exactly what you guys are talking about, is there is still appetite to buy online and pick up in store, even for jewelry. So, you know, I'm excited about the future of retail. I know there's going to be shifts, but I think, you know, it's going to leave out opportunities for real estate for the companies that are potentially coming out of it. You know, I'm super excited to see what retail is going to look like over time.
Challenging times when you have both kind of different costs suddenly on the supply base, right, with gold going up, and then losing some of your sales just because retail stores are closed or you have to close them, right?
Yeah, definitely
not
challenging.
an easy combination.
No.
Adrienne.
So for Rakuten, it's definitely a different perspective. It's kind of a mixed bag. So globally, Rakuten is made up of 70 plus businesses all over the world. And I think probably it's most known for the marketplace business in Japan. So it's sort of known as the Amazon of Japan. And so for that business, globally, our marketplace businesses have been up around 25% past budget. So I think in the US, it's a very different situation for us, because in the US, the sort of center of our business is the core is the cashback business, what used to be Ebates. And, you know, that business will do $10 billion in sales this year across 3,000 merchant partnerships. So we have this like really kind of cool ability to look across all the categories, and that's good in good times. And for us, this has been super challenging over the past couple of months, because we have such a dependence on marketplace businesses like Amazon and eBay, Walmart, Target, and that sounds good, except we have also a dependency on department stores and apparel players. So it's been this mixed bag of people being hit with bankruptcy, and people coming off the platform. So Amazon at the beginning of COVID, they exited their relationships with all of their loyalty affiliate partners. And so while they're maybe not necessarily a huge percentage of sales for us, they do drive frequency and they drive new membership. So we had this incredible impact of merchants kind of pulling out of our platform or really decreasing their budgets really quickly. So as the way our relationships work is those merchants cut their budgets so that their commissions that they pay to us. So our ability to offer a rich cashback incentive to buy just suddenly disappears. So definitely challenging times for us. We also have probably in good times about 30% of our revenue comes from travel bookings. And obviously the travel industry has dropped, over 90% in the past 3 months, and ticketing is a big category, also disappeared. So while certainly some of the players and some of the partners experience a lift, overall for us, it's been incredibly challenging.
Thank you. I would love to focus a little bit the discussion on, we've seen this radical change over the last 3 months, but the question is about what is sticking of that new behavior, what is going back to the previous behavior, and I think that's a question for the economy as an overall entity, but certainly true for e-commerce as well. Anybody has a unique opinion on what do you think is sticking, and what is perhaps just going back to normal before?
I think e-commerce growth, like e-commerce is going to be a very strong channel, going to continue to be, because customers who've never transacted on e-commerce before were forced to sort of adopt it. And so once you go e-commerce, it becomes, once you break the barrier, you become loyal to it. So I feel very optimistic about e-commerce, but like I said, retail right now is not necessarily at brick and mortar is what I mean, is not at its strongest, especially malls. So I think we're seeing more adoption to street locations. I do think that this is going to continue for quite some time. Personally, I do think obviously the larger department stores and some companies may essentially exit the landscape, and so the makeup of the retail and the availability of stores and the availability of locations will become maybe opportunistic for up and coming companies. So I do think that retail is slowing down, brick and mortar will come back up. My last point that I always have been passionate about, and I think if there's anything that's been focused on right now and should continue to be focused on, is supply chain. Because the more compressed your supply chain, the stronger you are, the more agile you are. And we're seeing this is very difficult, especially in apparel, when your product is seasonal, your lead times are long, you're forced to mark down your products when anything sort of impact the supply chain. So if there's any piece of advice that I would say is really the focus on e-commerce and supply chain together is really, really, really key.
And when you think specifically about your retail stores, I mean, there's two takes on it. The first one would be kind of e-commerce is the future, perhaps we deprioritize retail, right? The other take could be, listen, probably there's going to be a lot of really cheap retail space available going forward. We should double down. It's actually a really good distribution channel, and we believe in the future of kind of really unique retail experience, offline retail experiences. How do you think around that?
I think of number two, to be honest. I love retail. And the reason why I think of number two, if you have already started retail and you've already seen the results and you know what it works, how it works for you and how it sort of serves your community, then I would say it is an opportunity. If you've never done retail before, obviously, it could be good for you to experiment, but I don't know that you should double down on it. For us, this omni-channel, the experience between online and offline, and quite frankly, a lot of our customers, our transactions in the store are very like the customers we acquire in the store are 70% are net new. So it's a growth channel. It's not just sort of an experience just driving channel. So while some of these customers are now coming online, but there's nothing that can prevent us to going back to normal after this is all, whatever normal looks like, after this sort of calms down. So I guess to sum it up, my perspective is if you've seen success in retail prior to this, then you can look at it as an opportunity.
Yeah, Boris, I mean, I can comment on that a little bit. I think, at my previous company, Frank, we started in 2012 and we did about 4 years without physical retail. And then I would say it's a general trend where a lot of the D2C businesses, when they get to a certain scale, cost of acquisition increases, and therefore you want to diversify where you're getting your customers, and retail becomes one of the options. I would say I lean towards what Noura is saying, but I would be a lot more cautious, I guess, in my kind of feedback, in the sense that I do believe that retail can be profitable and retail can drive new customer acquisition, but the operational complexity and the cost of building the stores, managing the stores, is something that you need to be extremely careful about, because you effectively go from like having 40 employees all of a sudden having 400 employees, and when you hit a pandemic, it's not the same thing at all, right? In terms of the agility that you have, and I mean one area which is not relevant to this discussion that I think absolutely needs to be disrupted is just the whole like commercial leasing world. It's like it makes absolutely no sense that there is no flexibility, that brands and retailers are taking all the risk, and the traffic is changing on a yearly basis, right? So right now, what we're seeing is this sort of standstill between retailers and landlords, but it's all going to come down to a pretty big crash sometimes this fall. And my point actually is that I'm unfortunately quite pessimistic as to what's going to happen in the next 12 months. When you hear all the scientists talk, it seems like it's obvious that there's going to be a second wave. Or at least the fear of the second wave is going to drive both consumer behaviors and financial markets. So we're not going to see a significant uptake until probably next spring, which means I do think people are going to be a lot more conservative with their spending. And obviously it doesn't affect the foods category as much, but at some point, if people don't want to spend money, if they're trying to save whatever they have and they're worried about their future, that will have a large impact on the economy. And I think we're going to see that in the fall.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think, for us, we're having to look at replacing kind of our old guard of our top 10, 20 merchant partners with really an aggressive strategy around acquiring direct-to-consumer partners. So I think those guys have a huge opportunity. They're not carrying the debt load or that the big enterprise retailers are having. They're not stuck with real estate obligations. They tend to be faster around inventory management and just more agile, and their ability to play harder with us as a partner is much better. So that's where our focus will be around growth. I think, Boris, you asked about like which are the categories that are here to stay, and I think grocery delivery has just gotten so much better, and I do think that is a habit that has formed for consumers and will stick around. We're looking at online fitness, remote learning, a handful of things that are here to stay. But I think fundamentally every retailer has a great opportunity here as consumers start to really reconfigure for themselves what are their personal new necessities, what really matters to them. And and people are going out now and discovering new brands, and a lot of those are the D2C brands.
Yeah, and there's also, if I may add to that, I would say, talking about retailers and your comment also earlier, Ethan, is the consumer behavior is really more towards quality, for example, with the product, less frequency in terms of purchase, but higher end products that will last. And I think, we're all conscious of the impact on the environment, so of the impact of our purchasing, disposing of products. So I think brands that have the quality component, the sustainability component, are already at a head start in terms of competitive advantage.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think what we're going to see in the fall is, and that happened during the last recession as well, is there's really going to be two worlds. I think there's going to be the highly discounted, commodity-based goods. So we're definitely going to see a lot of markdowns. Obviously, a lot of retailers sitting on a lot of inventory. When a company, goes out of business, they also have to clear the inventory. So we're going to see like a sort of like deflation in terms of the price for commodity goods. And, someone like Walmart and Amazon is probably going to win in that space. But then I absolutely agree that a brand like Mejuri, because it has a really strong fan base, a captive audience, will probably like continue to do very well, even within a harder economic circumstances.
I think your point about inventory is really, really interesting. I think, all of for some of the more traditional brick and mortar retailers, they have this massive pent up demand. So, or pent up inventory rather. And so they are going to be looking to dump inventory like we've never seen before in the history of retail. There will be just tremendous discounting through the fall. I think the way we're looking at this is we're sort of expecting every day throughout the summer to feel like Black Friday.
Yeah. And the problem for a brand is once you head to that direction, you're obviously creating a message to the consumer that discounting possibility. And so it becomes a much more difficult situation for you to go back to your full price. And so it is quite dangerous. So I think inventory is really key.
So the elephant in the room of e-commerce growth and opportunity has always been how to compete with Amazon as kind of the most dominant platform. And it feels like in the last 2, 3, 4 years, there has been kind of the anti-Amazon alliance has been forming around Shopify and kind of more efficient distribution channels like Instagram and other social media channels. How do each of you think about kind of the Amazon versus anti-Amazon positioning, how to leverage each of these platforms or compete with them? Like, what's the framework for you to think about
that? I can get started. So for me, I can speak for I guess my industry is the way that I personally look at Amazon is very highly driven for convenience, for example. And so there's certain types of products that I associate with that. And I speak for myself and a lot of people I had this conversation with. Whereas when we're talking about fashion or talking about jewelry or talking about more of an aspirational product, I think you will win by also really focusing on your brand, really focusing on being a specialty retailer, because you buy these products not for convenience purposes. and you really want the subject matter expertise. And so my point of view is there are ways that you can compete with Amazon. It depends on what kind of product you're producing. And I'm a huge believer, I'm an engineer and scientific, etc., but I am a huge believer in brand and the emotional connection with the customer that cannot be duplicated with, convenience and discounts, etc. And so specialty retail is key. Your connection with your community, what do you stand for, your values, essentially your brand, and staying consistent with it is a competitive advantage.
Are you selling on Amazon Marketplace?
No, we're completely direct to consumer.
Okay.
For us, Amazon, like I mentioned, they exited all their relationships with their affiliate publishers in the loyalty space. So we obviously needed a strategy to combat that. We lost several players at once, with Macy's dropping out, with them, and their bankruptcy issues. We lost eBay, we lost Target. Macy's, eBay, and Target, I think, are all back now. So it's been a bit of a mixed bag, but Amazon is.
Do you think Amazon going to come back, or was that just more?
No, that's an awesome question. Our assumption is Amazon will not be back with us. They're back in Canada with some players more than they are in the US. But we really need a sustainable strategy. So we looked to support small and medium businesses on our platform and really divert spend to our own spend to relevant stores and to those stores. So we invested in, and so what we do is we take all of the commission that people pay us and we keep half or thereabouts, and we give back half in cash back. So we just cut our margins, and we gave away as much cash back as we possibly could to drive demand for a while, and it worked. So we were able to sort of shift about actually like more than 90% of our Amazon spend to places like Target and Macy's and Kohl's. So, and we were able to do that without losing, loyal members with our existing Amazon shopper members. So in many cases, I think, we're actually able to increase some of that Amazon spend. And by the end of May, had almost been able to get membership back, like member spending for those people back up to 2019 levels. And then Black Lives Matter hit and everything changed. But I think, Amazon's so interesting for all of us because they've decided to move Prime Week, and Prime Week is a huge deal for Amazon, but it also has this like halo effect across the whole industry of kind of getting consumers in a spending mood. So what happens is, and I'm sure that others can comment on this too, but our observations of what happens is merchants will build programs around that same time. And so, and to take advantage of the moment. And so they've decided to move the week into September, which means that all of us won't be able to comp our numbers from last year. And for those that really matters for, and for a lot of our partners it does, we have to creatively find ways to actually create our own event now to comp last year's numbers. But effectively what that means for us is that, and what I think it means for a lot of people, is that we're looking at Q4 starting earlier this year. So Prime Week is in September, followed by, or right around the same time as Labor Day sales. Then that's effectively going to be the kickoff for Q4.
It looks like you're squarely in the anti-Amazon alliance, forcibly so.
Yeah.
Perhaps before we go to question and answer, would love to ask each of you, if you were an e-commerce entrepreneur today, thinking about where to spend your time and perhaps starting a business, what would be general areas you feel like there's tons of potential, perhaps unresolved problems, things you get excited about, just random ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I think the mindset of being an e-commerce entrepreneur is the wrong mindset in the first place. I think what Noura is doing, which is, I come from a tradition of jewelry, and that's my passion, and that is what I want to bring to the world, is the better way of thinking about it. Because to me, like, the two things you should focus on if you're getting started today is product and audience. Like, who are you targeting and what makes your product special? If you can figure these two things out, the rest is going to change so fast anyways that you can't decide that today. You're just going to have to be agile and adapt to where the traffic is coming from effectively. There's nothing that guarantees that Instagram will be the dominant platform in 10 years from now. But if you're making a good product that people want to buy, that's something that you can own. So that's my perspective.
Thanks, Ethan. I do believe product trumps everything. At the end of the day, you can do everything that you can. You can sell, you can do great marketing, etc. But the product needs to be there. And then again, the sort of the, I guess, unsexy part of it, which is the supply chain. Again, I go back to that is really, we integrated with an ERP, for example, super early on. We have our technology team in-house. We really believed in sort of building the infrastructure, or call it the plumbing of the business earlier on. And I think, while we think of the brand and the product, but building your infrastructure is part of what you deliver to customers or how you will deliver it and part of customer experience. So I don't know if that answers the question, but you can tell that that's sort of part of my passion is how do you deliver the product as well, consistently.
Yeah, I would agree with that on the sort of unsexy part, on the plumbing. I think there's a massive need and an opportunity for innovation on shopper convenience and store design, both in store and in apps, right? The ease of UX, the ease of payment, the ease of checkout, and supply chain is more important than ever. Buy online, pick up in store, inventory management, the ability to optimize that and to execute well is more important than ever.
Very cool. Thank you.
You, Boris, before I move to, I want to hear you answer your own question. Where do you think the opportunity?
I think there's a few things that I would think about. I mean, first of all, I think if you don't have a concrete idea, right, but you're interested in e-commerce in general, I would just spend some time on the Shopify platform. There is, tens and hundreds of millions of dollar businesses built as an app on the Shopify platform. It's just a great way to understand where is a need in the retail ecosystem. And that could be everything from a product to a pure service, right? I think we just recently talked to some of the Shopify Plus people. So that's a little bit the higher end enterprise product for Shopify, where you see more and more of the large brands coming over. And they, for example, struggle tremendously with legacy systems that run all of the inventory and supply chain and warehousing, et cetera. And then trying to kind of connect that to a modern storefront on Shopify, right? And so that could be, I think there's a lot of services help that is needed. And then on the other end, you have it just like the super scalable app platform on Shopify. I think the second really interesting theme I find is this whole shop local, right? And we've never really figured that out. There was a whole movement 10 years ago about even making local inventory available, and a few startups have tried that. It's really tough to get into POS systems, and kind of everything is a little different and aggregate all of that. But I think as more and more of these stores come online and have the inventory online and indexable, and as they're more and more on one platform, which is Shopify, if they're more and more open to pick up and curbside delivery and online delivery, et cetera, I think there are going to be a lot of new ideas around curation, plumbing around local commerce, empowering local commerce. And, we'll see if it's going to stick or not, but I think there has never been a bigger awareness of people that they need to support their local communities and their local retailers. And if somebody can figure out how to write that movement, those emotions right now, I think there's a lot to be done.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you, Boris. We're going to move over to questions from our community. The first one comes from Neil Thompson. Neil, we're going to find you and unmute you. Just tell us who you are, where you're calling in from, and then we've got your question here, but if you can read it out.
Hi, everyone. Neil from Naked Snacks. We're based in Vancouver. We have seen a notable increase in our sales since lockdown began. And that probably looks like close to sort of 3.5 times. I have a couple of people around me who've wondered if that will remain, or if we can expect that they'll kind of drop back to regular levels. So I just wondered what everyone's opinions were on that.
Mhm.
Hey, yeah, I've actually, I'm working with a few commerce in the food business, and I think that what everyone is seeing is that there will definitely, like, you're going to see this sort of like, you know, significant increase, and as people are stocking up, so you should expect to see somewhat of a decrease. But as it decreases, it will still be higher than what you were at previously, which means that, you know, your business will still have grown, but you shouldn't expect that level of increase to maintain itself. And just be careful, you know, in terms of your managing your inventory and your marketing, because as people are stocked up now, as the world is coming back to more of a normal state, you know, they may be buying less. And I've seen this in a few categories, including food and drinks.
Any differing opinions on that from Adrienne or Boris or Noura?
I don't have a different opinion. I agree. I think in a food and snack category, you're in a pretty good place right now. What I would say for other categories is just to underscore what Ethan said. You know, I think what we've seen in the last 2 weeks alone with the impact of Black Lives Matter and just like the attention of society being elsewhere, people's appetite for spending is just not there, especially discretionary spending, right? So there is no way to predict. You know, a month ago we were in one crisis, then we shifted to another crisis on top of a crisis. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I would just underscore what Ethan said, caution.
Let's, thank you. That's just, it is so interesting. I bet everyone on the line today is involved in entrepreneurship or e-commerce in some way, and we're also consumers. And so what you just said really resonates, certainly with me, I'm sure, with others on the line too. We're going to move over to one of our C100 members, Andrea Drager. Andrea, love your question. Just unmute yourself.
Awesome. Hi, Laura.
Hey.
Thanks so much. And thanks, guys. This is super interesting. You know, we have a bunch of e-commerce companies in our portfolio, and one of the things that we've noticed is just a challenge in kind of thinking about how to continue to evolve and change the customer acquisition strategy. And so I wanted to kind of specifically kind of understand from the three of you how you guys think, with all this kind of increased noise coming into the e-commerce space right now, with typical brick and mortar coming online and in a much more focused way, I think, than before. There's obviously more competition for those online eyeballs. And so wanted to kind of get a sense from you on both how you're thinking about your customer acquisition strategy in this moment and going forward. And then also maybe touch on a little bit around kind of retention, which I think speaks to the last question as well.
So maybe we start with Noura and then Adrienne.
Sounds good. So I think for us, so we are seeing the customer acquisition costs actually be more affordable than before. And I know that this is not necessarily here to stay. This is just as a result of more people being online. I do obviously anticipate that there's going to be more competition over time, and therefore this is sort of, we shouldn't take it for granted type of thing. But we all, like, the number one thing that we've all, I guess, learned over the past few years is diversification. But we're focused, I'll tell you about us, we're focused heavily on right now figuring out how to nurture further our relationships with our existing customers. So during the times when things were very difficult, and they continue to be obviously, but we saw a jump from 30 to 40% of our transactions from repeat customers. It sounds great because our loyal customers are quite engaged, but it's also not necessarily amazing in terms of your growth. But in these times, I think the biggest thing that we can do is how do we nurture relationships with our existing base of customers? How do we get them to come back more often? How do we become their number one choice? In terms of diversification, we continue to take advantage of the CACs that we're seeing right now. We obviously scaled down on out-of-home spend. No one's in the street. We are continuing to nurture our relationships with our community of influencers and customers. PR has become also top of mind. So continuing on these, taking whatever we've cut down in terms of out-of-home spend and putting it into these channels. And I would say, building the foundations of a better loyalty program.
So So for Rakuten, we have kind of 2 points of view on this, because we, of course, are busy trying to acquire our own new customers, and our sort of spend mix has changed dramatically in the past couple of months. We spend a lot of money on TV. Generally, and it performs very well for us, like direct TV generally. And while we continue to spend there, in the last 2 weeks, we frankly stopped advertising on Fox News. And as a sort of an ethical decision, a hard decision, because it had a major impact, it has had a major impact on our ability to acquire new customers. So that said, I think from a retailer perspective, we are a platform that our partners use to acquire new members. And normally you look at a loyalty publisher like us as an opportunity to for retention more. Generally, that's the way people think of us as a partner. And we do work that way, and that is kind of our wheelhouse. But we also have if we're creative about it, and our partners are creative about it, a real ability to help people acquire new to file. So we did see some really nice examples of that during COVID. So good examples in the shoe category, like no one's buying shoes right now, right? Like why would you care about what you're wearing from the waist down, basically, on Zoom? And I think it's actually been a huge success story for us, because we have a number of very aggressive shoe merchants. So like Nike and Adidas, and they've actually used this opportunity to gain share away from competitors to increase their spend with us, and actually increase cash back and drive not only new to file, but just overall frequency, overall sales. And so that's just my view on it. And suddenly, shoes is actually a top category, where that would never have been in the top 10 under normal circumstances.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what you said about Fox News is huge. So you're saying there's still room for values in the world of big e-commerce. This is really fascinating, Adrienne.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we could do a whole roundtable on that. But we're not going to, because we have a couple of other questions to get to. We're going to go to Mikhail Ranget. Mikhail?
Yes, I'm there.
Hi, tell us where you're calling from, Mikhail.
Yeah, I'm calling from Vancouver. My company is Fine AI, so we're focusing mostly on AI technology for retailers, specifically for planning. And what I've seen recently is a lot of like apparel companies, especially accessories. They will do many digital initiatives, especially like e-commerce and other initiatives. And I just wanted to know your opinion on this. Like right now with the reopening of stores, what do you think would be the best digital initiatives to take for companies in the industry?
Mikhail, who's your question directed to? Do you have any?
To all the panelists.
All the okay. Does anyone, who wants to take that one first? Boris or Ethan? You guys have perspective on that?
Are you speaking specific about inventory clearance? Because I can see a question here. Is that
yeah, I had two questions. Actually, it can be different. It doesn't need to be the same. So I think inventory is kind of a big issue for all the retailers I'm talking to. So I was quite curious about your opinion on it. How's the best way to deal with the inventory right now without negatively affecting the brand, especially like I forget who mentioned it earlier, but we talked about like if you try to clear your inventory too fast, then you're going to have to do a lot of discount, and this is going to affect your image, right? So any question is fine to answer. Both are quite an interesting topic for me.
I mean, I think there's really kind of two answers to that. I can answer quickly. I mean, I think one is, I think a lot of players don't have the choice. They need to turn the inventory into cash, especially if you're in a seasonal space and you need winter goods to even make any sales at all. I think you just have to do it, whichever way you need to do it. So that's just the reality, I think, of business. But beyond that, I would say that, I've also seen a trend towards doing like online warehouse sales, right? But the reality of those is that it definitely dilutes your margins, definitely dilutes your brand, because online it's easily accessible from anywhere. So there's no difference between an online warehouse sales and just a regular sale. So I think that, probably taking more of a city by city, more traditional clearance approach is probably a better approach, because at least you localize it, you isolate your inventory, and you're basically just, you know, cutting back on it without impacting your overall brand and your overall margins. That's my thinking.
Thanks, Ethan. Let's move on to a question from Chris Albinson. Chris, C100 charter member, got a question about foot.
Yeah, I just curious. First of all, love the conversation and very thoughtful answers. One of the things that we're seeing from an economic mobility index is that in the U.S. there's this big bifurcation where some categories, things like auto dealerships, big box stores, QSR, and grocery are almost back to 100% of the pre-COVID foot traffic now. Even malls, you know, and casual dining are almost at 50% back to foot traffic. So 2 quick questions around that data. And if folks aren't watching that data, it's pretty fascinating how fast the US consumer is coming back to retail, you know, just week over week. Do you think it's a head fake and the second wave happens, in which case, you know, this goes away? And if it doesn't go away, what is the implications in terms of your omnichannel strategies? Appreciate the time and the conversation.
I can get started on that. So I'll tell you what we're doing. We're thinking of it literally a localized strategy, meaning obviously just understanding whatever is going on. Let's say we operate in Austin, what's going on in Austin. We have 3 models of operating stores right now, and 3 essentially assumptions of, you know, cannot operate at X percentage capacity, pick order in store and pick up online. I don't know. The answer is, quite frankly, I don't know. I think that it's going to go through ups and downs, but I would say the approach that we are taking is to tread with caution, which is essentially take the more less staffing, assume lower foot traffic, build your cost structure based on that, and then you can rise from there. Because I think it's just literally you're going to have to work based on what is happening real time almost. And so I would say really building the different capacity, building the different cost structures, the different foot traffic percentages that you might be expecting, and then build accordingly. That's from my point of view. It's a completely different industry than the ones that you've mentioned, but that's how we're going about retail.
Great, thank you so much, Noura. We have a question here. I think we're going to direct it to probably some combination of Adrienne and Ethan, given some of both of your experiences in the Asian market. The question's from William Au. William, we're going to unmute you. Tell us who you are, where you're calling in from. We love your question.
Yeah, hi, William Au here, investor, LP in various VC funds based in Vancouver. So this question is curiosity to the existing e-commerce business owners out there. I mean, obviously there's a focus on one's own backyard when it comes to sales, i.e. so if you're a Canadian merchant, you tend to sell within you know, your own continent, i.e. North America. But is there kind of a thought process internally now or an idea slash strategy on trying to sell beyond one's borders, i.e. China? And if so, what are kind of the platforms out there to allow those North American merchants to actually access cross ocean markets?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, from my perspective, you know, because you want to have a very specific demographic, I do think that having a global business still makes a lot of sense. You know, despite obviously all the border controls that we're seeing right now, I think that, you know, selling to a global market and selling to the world makes a lot of sense. I also think that, to your point, you know, some of the larger players like the Shopify's of this world are making it a lot easier to do that kind of transition. You know, like Shopify is really focused on connecting with marketplaces, you know, whether it's eBay or, you know, the new partnership with Walmart. So I wouldn't be surprised if very soon you're going to see a transition where directly through your Shopify, you can start selling like on Tmall or on Taobao, one of the Asian platforms or some of the European platforms as well. And then after that, I think it's really about more logistics. And I think that we're already seeing like a logistics going towards more of a SaaS model, where basically you can very cheaply connect with a global network of 3PLs. I think once that is in place, I do think we're going to see an acceleration of, cross-border commerce.
Adrienne, what are you seeing on that front in terms of cross-ocean or cross-border?
Well, Rakuten has marketplaces in many markets around the world. So Japan, France, Germany, Taiwan, and others. And they act very much in that way, right? You can as a small seller, you can sell whatever you want on one of those platforms to any of those markets. And as I said earlier, those businesses in aggregate are sort of up 25% year over year on budget. So I think there's lots of activity there. I'm not sure that I have enough visibility to comment really in any more intelligent way on it than Ethan already has.
We have not that much time left. We are going to try to get to one more question before we close off here. It is from one of our members based locally here, Raed Masri. Raed, could you introduce yourself?
Hey guys, great job today. Enjoyed the conversation. Ex-entrepreneur, VC in San Francisco, and my question has to do with social commerce and what your views on that is and whether you guys have a strategy for it. Thank you.
Social commerce.
Can you give us your definition of what social commerce is?
Yeah, could we unmute Raed again?
Sure, something that builds perhaps network effects as opposed to just a transaction.
Any perspectives on that? Maybe even from the investor side, Boris, on social commerce?
It's really interesting. I think there's a few things. I mean, first of all, social commerce has been around for like the term for a long period of time, right? And in the beginning, people always just thought about like the kind of this general, it would be fun to go shopping with friends, and that was what kind of the social commerce experience was. I think what we're seeing is much more commerce starting to become part of social networks. You see that with Instagram, right? I mean, like a lot of the DTC brands actually were built on Instagram, right? And acquired all their customers with Instagram. You now see it with, for example, Facebook Marketplace, that is now a very large part of Facebook, right? And is now thinking to moving from the peer-to-peer commerce that they had on there to actually B2C commerce, so adding shops to it, right? And the Shopify Shops integration has done it. So I think I think there's a real big aspect, but I think what I've come to believe is commerce just becomes part of the social networks versus it's hard to start with a commerce approach and then put social on it. That seems to have worked way less than the other way around.
I agree with you. I think from our perspective, I will say that we've done some research and some prototyping around thinking about ways to inject social commerce into the Rakuten app. So while you're shopping around and looking at the stores that are available with other Rakuten members, you could post a video of what you bought and encourage other people to buy it, and to create that sort of network or social effect within the Rakuten membership. And I think we come up to, I think like Boris, you were sort of implying there that like we come up to this kind of a hard place where the user experience around checkout really needs to be like way easier than it is today. The autofill components, like we're just not there. So that, I think we kind of want to go there, and we have lots of ideas to get there, but all the pieces are not in place today. That's how it feels to me.
Thanks, Adrienne and Boris. So we're at time, so we unfortunately have to close this super rich discussion. I just want to thank the four of you so much for your honesty, your insights, your time, your expertise. You really are four incredible Canadians leading in this space. So thank you so much. C100 is making a very modest contribution to the COVID related charity of each of your choice. If we have not done so yet, you'll hear from us this afternoon to make that happen. Thank you. And to the rest of you, thank you so much. If you are a C100 member, we're having a members town hall on Monday morning. We hope to see you all there. You'll catch up on our plans, some new announcements that we'll make ahead of making public next week. Please do join us, and then we hope to see you guys all online. And stay healthy, stay safe. Talk to you guys next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.